Folks, I was not the brightest bulb in the pack. I'm seeing students coming out that want my job now. Do what you say when you say you're going to do it. Without integrity, you have nothing. Well, my name is Mark Smolik. I serve as the Chief Legal and Compliance Officer for DHL Supply Chain in the Americas. I have the privilege of leading a team of 60 people in 7 different countries. We handle the legal, compliance, and commercial contract work. We move product for most of the Fortune 500 companies. I've been with the organization not quite 10 years. My main duties, first and foremost, if I look at my day, is 100% of my time. 40%, if not 45%, is just spent on management issues tied to the department. It could be everything from team reviews and individual employees reviews, sitting down and talking to people about their career development, developing their own network, or maybe even just helping with projects. I don't have the opportunity to get too deep into the issues. That's why I've got subject matter experts with whom I work. But I would equate it to more of a macroeconomic as opposed to a micro. I'm pretty high level with regard to what I do, and I find that with most generals counsel, spread out among many projects throughout the entire department. But what I enjoy most about my job is the people with whom I work. Oftentimes people, they don't feel valued. If they don't feel that there's good and adequate communication, they'll leave an employee. I don't have that here. The moments of work that make me the proudest are when I open up an email or I get a phone call from somebody, as I did this morning, complimenting somebody on my team for a job well done. Especially if you've had some influence in working with them on developing a presentation, maybe giving them a little guidance with regard to how they do what they do. The more that you leverage your team and you let them shine, the more reflection is on you as a leader. And that's a pretty good feeling. When I got out of law school, I knew a lot about theory. Now I know a lot about practice, the inner workings of a corporation. Clients are going to you like they're going to the doctor. Here's my problem. How do you address it? How do you fix it? And oftentimes, much like in medicine, there's no black and white answer in the law. So you've got to draw on your experience to come up with the best guidance that you can. One of the most stressful situations I've had in my legal career involved being a member of a team where we were doing an acquisition for a company with whom I worked. And we were in Chicago. We were purchasing a very, very large division of an international conglomerate company. And we were one of 4 buyers. This company was being split up. We were in a very, very large law firm conference rooms. We came in on a Monday morning. We left on a Friday morning and never went to bed. The negotiations were long, they were intense. Ultimately, at the end of the day, with lack of sleep, some pretty bad conference room food, we were able to get done what we set out to accomplish, but the stress associated with that was almost beyond manageable. There's a lesson that, particularly in management, that I have never forgotten. Your people are perhaps your most valuable resource, and you have to leverage them and understand what their limitations are. And putting somebody through 5 days of no sleep might accomplish your end, but it surely doesn't do very much for your employees. In my opinion, the type of education somebody should pursue if they want to work in the law, whether outside counsel or whether inside counsel, is one that quite candidly interests them the most. 30 years ago, going into law school, everybody said political science is the way to go. And if it wasn't political science, it was history, or maybe it was English. But unlike other professionals, such as dentists, who can come out and on day one do something meaningful, they can fill a tooth. When I got out of law school, I didn't even know where the courthouse was. I didn't know how to file a brief, what I needed to do to file a brief. My advice to anybody pursuing a legal career, first and foremost, write as much as you can. There's a great deal of the bar exam that is still the written word. Take as many philosophy classes as you can that push critical thinking. One of the ways people can improve their writing skills is to think of a relatively simple concept. When you are seeking to make a point, never forget what I call the hook. What is it that you want to convey? Take the time before you put pen, paper to pencil, or typing on that keyboard to think about what is the most important message that I want to communicate. It never ceased to amaze me when I was teaching the bar review courses, or even when I was sitting taking the bar exam many, many years ago, how many students would read the question and immediately jump right into writing an answer. If you take the time to really think through what you want to communicate, you'll find that the arguments that flow are much easier. The most important qualities to succeed, not just in my job, in any job, is do what you say when you say you're going to do it. You see, people will judge you based on the words that come out of your mouth and your actions. But at the end of the day, the best way that you can gain confidence and trust with somebody is to do what you say, number one. The other qualities that I think are most important is without integrity, you have nothing. You won't have trust, you won't have confidence, etc. You have to exude that integrity. That comes from your personality. That comes from aligning and understanding what expectations are. It is not treating the CEO any different than you might treat the most junior person in the organization. One of the other qualities that I think that is most important is an unwavering commitment to help people and to help the client. The aspect of my job that I enjoy the least is the travel. I have been on an airplane for collectively years, millions and millions of miles. My kids were growing up and I was in Brazil. It was tough to listen to a piano recital. So there's a balance that you have to need to make in life. The other thing that is perhaps most challenging is when somebody with whom you have worked for so long and with whom you have developed a deep reputation of respect violates their own integrity. They do something that you just say, what in the world were you thinking? It's tough to sit down with somebody like that. And that's just the human side of it. Some of the factors that determine how fast somebody can grow in their career go slow to go fast. I've seen many people in their career come into their career and try to fast track through it, and it never works. I'm seeing students coming out that want my job now, understanding they're not going to get it now. There is a process that you have to go through. There is a learning curve you have to go through. There's experience you have to go through. When it comes to evaluating the environment of the place that you're going to work, a couple of factors come into mind as well. You have to be honest with yourself and ask, is this job a means to an end? Am I going to be here for 2 years or 3 years as a stepping stone to get on to something different? If the answer to that question is yes, then culture is not as important. Experience is. You can pick any of the very, very largest law firms anywhere in the world and get some wonderful experience. If what you're looking for, whether it's job 1, 2, or 3, is a place to stay and to hang your hat for a period of time, my advice to you is focus most on the culture than anything else. When it comes to making evaluations with regard to the future of the legal industry, law firms are under considerable strain. They provide a phenomenal service, but at price points that more and more clients cannot continue to pay. I personally won't pay somebody $800 or $900 an hour, thinking what is that cost going to be 5 or 10 years from now? It's not a sustainable business model. It is why more and more alternative legal service providers, companies like Elevate or Thomson Reuters or Wolters Kluwer, are developing alternative ways of providing legal services. They've got the technology, they've got the apps, they've got the people, they've got the lawyers that are doing what they need to do that might be being paid $50 an hour, not $500 an hour, and yet the output is the same. It's creating a dynamic opportunity for people coming out of law school. There are opportunities for self-employment. It's a bit rare. Of all of the people that I went to law school with, over 200 that graduated my class, only one went on his own and is still on his own today. Unless you have worked in an environment where you naturally have attracted clients who want to use you early on, which is kind of tough when you get out of school and you're 25 or 26 years old, it's going to be a struggle. I've seen it work with some people who might have been in sales for 10 years and then went to law school, got out, and people become clients. One of the things that people would find most surprising about the role of a general counsel or chief compliance officer is we don't make decisions in a vacuum or on an island. I am making a recommendation, but I am conferring with multiple people in the company. I'm talking to my CFO. If it's a significant enough issue, I'll talk to my CEO. It happens more frequently than you would think, especially as you get a little bit older in your career, or perhaps more advanced in your career, where people will ask you for legal advice. It could be help in drafting a will. I mean, there have been a couple of instances where I've actually handled trials for some people that have been involved in automobile accidents or maybe some other disputes where they don't have the money to otherwise pay a lawyer. And that's part of the giving the back proposition. There really isn't any difference. In some very large organizations, take Cardinal Health for example, they have a chief legal officer. And reporting to the chief legal officer will be general counsel of various business units. At the end of the day, the chief legal officer is the one who has responsibility for the entire legal department. But it's a rarity. The thing I am most grateful for is the way in which I grew up. Which was in a very caring and loving environment where we didn't have a lot, but if you wanted something, you went out and got it. You earned your way to get it. The other thing that I am most grateful for is my wife and my 2 kids, because they have been the cornerstone of everything that I do. I've known my wife since May 12th, 1982. She is perhaps the best sounding board for anything that I have going on. Well, when I realized I wanted to do something related to law and compliance, if I could be just brutally honest with you, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a doctor. That's the truth. I got to undergrad and I majored in political science and communications. And the chairperson of the political science department said, "You're never going to make it to law school." My grades in the sciences weren't all that great. Folks, I was not the brightest bulb in the pack when it comes to academic achievement. But give me a problem to solve and I'd solve it. By the time I was midway through my sophomore year, my grades had improved pretty significantly, and the chair of the political science group said, "You ought to be a lawyer." She was, and that was it. The reaction I got from my parents when I told them I wanted to be a lawyer was secondary, because I first told my grandmother, and she said, "Oh no, please don't." She grew up through the poverty and through the depression and never had a good image of lawyers. But she said, "What about the doctor?" And I said, "It's not going to happen. But being a lawyer is something that I'm intrigued by." She never looked back. My parents were happy. I was the first in my family anywhere to go to school beyond college. So when it came time to graduate from law school on May 20th of 1987, it was a very, very big occasion for the family. Well, what motivated me to go first to college and then ultimately to law school was just my own internal burning desire. I was one of 5 kids. We didn't grow up with a lot. If you had $3, you had a lot of money. Going to college was a challenge. I had to pay for it on my own. 100% of the college tuition I had to pay for. So I worked pretty hard as a carpenter for a construction company, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved creating things, working on or building houses, and I thought about making a career out of it. But when I looked around at some of the guys who were working construction that are my age now, back then, when I was 18, 19, I said, "There's no way I want to do this." I applied to a number of colleges, ultimately was accepted, decided I wanted to stay local, went to John Carroll University, continued to work construction, and did that through law school. And then had a critical decision to make, because I had built up a pretty decent-sized construction company on my own that was bringing in a number of new projects, new jobs, bringing in a fair amount of revenue. And the decision was, do I continue to do this or do I go to law school? And ultimately, cooler minds prevailed, and I decided to go the law school route. But it was also with the advice of a lot of guys that I had met in the construction who said, go to law school. Ironically, a lot of those guys became clients after I graduated and went on to the law firm. But I've enjoyed it ever since. When I applied for jobs at some of the law firms when I was still in school, I got to be candid. There were a number of the law firms that said, "Thank you very much," and I received the letter in the mail, but they weren't interested. I was pretty high up in my class, but I was not top 10%. I ultimately went to work for a firm that handled a lot of real estate and construction work. And it was perfect because it was exactly what I was doing, working my way through undergraduate and law school. Well, my hobbies outside work, not surprisingly, involve woodworking. Over the course of the past almost 40 years, I've become a pretty good carpenter, much of which I donate to people, some in the military or what have you. There are similarities between the carpentry work that I do or in being a lawyer. First and foremost, you've got a product or a service that you're providing to somebody, and you have the goal or the desire to provide the best that you could. Now, when it comes to being a carpenter, it is providing a bedroom set, as I did for somebody, or a kitchen table that is one of the nicest that they have seen. As a lawyer, you're doing something different. You don't oftentimes have a physical product. It is more insight or advice that guides them to certain conclusions or solves problems. But at the end of the day, you're delivering something of value to somebody. You should consider getting into my profession if you are passionate about helping people. It is exceptionally gratifying, especially if they don't have the means to necessarily address things on their own, but they're turning to you to help fix a problem. And the more that you can relate to them, not only personally, but emotionally, doing so in a way that financially is reasonable for them, the more self-gratification you're going to get out of it. You should not consider getting into my profession if all you want to do is make money and make it quickly. You're not going to do it early on. For those of you who may be watching this, who are wondering, how do I achieve a general counsel position, a chief legal officer position, maybe a chief compliance position in any legal department? Folks, I wasn't the brightest bulb in the bunch when it came to my schoolwork. I didn't come from a lot. If I wanted something, if I wanted to buy something, I had to earn it on my own. I earned $7 an hour working construction. But if there is one thing that I had and still have, it is an uncompromising work ethic, and more importantly, a degree of integrity that has never tarnished. Network with people who can open up opportunities that will provide you a path to this position. Network, network, network. And I can't tell you how important that is. If you happen to go to a conference and hear a speaker and might be a little intimidated about approaching him or her afterwards and just thanking them and perhaps asking them for their contact information or connecting with them on social media, you're missing an opportunity. I was fortunate enough to be presented with this opportunity because of a member of my network who contacted me over 10 years ago about this job. And the same is true for my job at SafeLight. Never forget that you're selling a service. That service is the knowledge that you have, but it is how you present that knowledge in a confident, rational, easy to understood manner that is really going to set you apart from anybody else. I wish you all the best as you continue to develop your careers. If any of you do want to connect with me on LinkedIn or through other social media, I'd encourage you to do so.